news for Canadian employers. The 75% federal wage subsidy program is being extended to the end of August. More businesses can now apply for the subsidy as the government is expanding eligibility for the program. Will this be enough to keep Canadians employed as the economy starts to reopen? What about other financial aid programs like the CERB? Let's get some answers with Nova Scotia Premier Sean Fraser, the Finance Minister's Parliamentary Secretary. He joins us from Nova Scotia. Hello, Sean Fraser. Thanks for being there. Very nice to see you. Your government has extended the wage subsidy to August. Now, so far, according to your own figures, $3.5 billion were doled out of a $70 billion program. So let me understand this. Is it that companies are not applying for this wage subsidy? Are they not retiring people? What is going on out there?
So thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be on the show as always. The wage subsidy program was intended to provide support directly for workers, but also an incentive for employers to keep their staff tied to the positions so they can bounce back most effectively. So far, we've seen about 2 million Canadians are being supported, about 500,000 employers. So with respect to the premise of the question, I do want to point out that this is helping a significant number of Canadians and is working in conjunction with other programs like the CERB, which you've mentioned, which is now helping over 7 million Canadians. As we move forward to ensure that Canadians are going to continue the kind of support they need to be well and get through this public health emergency, we're going to continue to iterate and tinker with policies as we need to make sure that we're encouraging Canadians to get back to work and at the same time providing support to them in their time of need.
No, I understand that there are other programs, but when the CERB came out, people applied, understandably so. You said 7 million of them are on CERB. It is, a $35 billion program, and you have run out of those $35 billion. So I'm wondering, the wage subsidy came a lot later because first it was 10% and it was, obviously not that interesting. Went up to 75%, so became a lot more interesting. Was it too late? Is that why? Because it seems that, yes, it's helping a couple of million people, but employers don't seem to be applying for it the way everybody thought they would.
There's a number of different factors at play that I would suggest are contributing to the number that we've seen. First of all, not every employer is eligible. You obviously have to suffer a fairly significant hit to your revenue, a drop of 30% overall before you qualify. I'll point out as well that the wage subsidy does have the ability for employers to claim it retroactively. Some of the things that I've heard through employers who are sort of becoming familiar with these new programs as they roll out in my own community is that they do want to take advantage and are budgeting for a claim under the wage subsidy program, but haven't necessarily submitted their application to the program yet. So I wouldn't take necessarily the expenditures to date as a signal as to what the final cost of this program will be. Ultimately, what we want to see happen is that Canadians are supported through this public health emergency and given enough support to essentially hold their breath long enough so they can rejoin the economy in full force once we have the worst of this pandemic behind us.
Oh, and perhaps some of these businesses, as the government, we don't really know what is going to happen even next week. Once the reopening happens, is there going to be a second wave? What is reality going to look like? So that's understandable. But you haven't extended the CERB for those, who don't have a job. And the deadline for the CERB is what, 5-6 weeks ago? It's the end of June. So would you consider extending the CERB if, these reopenings or these rebootings of the economies in different parts of the country are, delayed?
Frankly, everything remains on the table to respond to the public health and economic challenges that face us. I wouldn't rule anything out at this stage. Of course, the policy response is going to be in accordance with the public health advice that we're receiving, and it's going to mirror the social circumstances and economic circumstances in which Canada finds itself. So to the extent that the public health emergency is still requiring Canadians to stay home and be safe, we're going to look at what policy options, including extensions to existing programs, might be required to essentially fill the gaps to ensure that Canadians continue to have the support they need to keep a roof over their head and food on the table. I don't want to prejudge the outcome of what the next few weeks may have in store. Although I'm sure you would love me to jump to an answer and say yes or no, it will or won't be extended, decisions of that nature are going to be taken to reflect the reality in which we find ourselves at the time when that arrives. With respect to the extension of the wage subsidy today, we were hearing loud and clear from employers that they wanted to be planning a few months ahead, and we're going to conduct a consultation to see what further changes will be required to transition people back towards a more normalized economy. But with respect to the potential extension of the CERB, we're going to be looking at all options to support Canadians and making policy decisions that actually reflect the needs that reveal themselves as this public health emergency continues to evolve.
Well, you actually did answer my question. I'm wondering something about the fiscal update. So I know that this year there will probably not be a federal budget. I think a lot of people understand that. A fiscal update, however, would give Canadians an idea of how much so far, what you expect to be spending, how much these programs are going to cost. The parliamentary budget officer, the watchdog, has said, estimated a deficit of $250 billion and a debt of $1 trillion. So why not give Canadians sort of a fiscal update? And I understand the Prime Minister said, listen, we don't know, we can't do a budget, we don't know what's going to happen in 12 months from now, we don't even know what's going to happen in 12 weeks from now, but you could give Canadians an idea of where you're going with this spending, could you not?
Certainly. In fact, we're doing what we can to update Canadians, frankly, on a daily basis. You see the Prime Minister making his press conferences daily, often followed up by a technical briefing, including the estimated expenditure of various programs. One of the challenges to tabling a formal budget or a formal fiscal update is that so many things can change as these policies develop. One of the things you'll probably have noted over the last number of weeks is the government has constantly been responding to changes that take place in society, or responding to changes, or rather feedback that we hear from Canadians on how our programs can be improved. If I look at the wage subsidy, it provides a particularly helpful example because the announcement today, although the focus has been on the extension till August 29th, we're also discussing launching a consultation with the business community to understand how we can help businesses transition off a wage subsidy and back towards a full-blown economy that's operating in an efficient marketplace. Because some of the details of these major expenditures are still evolving in accordance with decisions that have to be made, we can't say with a level of confidence exactly what the total measures will cost. So we'll do our best to continue to introduce policies and keep Canadians updated, not just on fiscal updates, but on literally a daily basis.
Before I go, I want to change topic, if you would allow me. You are from Nova Scotia, and your province is closing its borders to visitors. I'm wondering, as a Nova Scotian, how do you feel about that? Do you think it's necessary? Are you comfortable with that as a federal MP?
Look, I can tell you, myself and all my neighbors are all going a little bit shack happy. We would love to get out into our communities and do all the things that we enjoy with our time, particularly as the warmer weather comes around. But I have to say, I have enormous respect for the decisions being taken by the provincial government on the advice of Dr. Strang, our chief medical officer. I would not feel comfortable going out and enjoying myself in the community in a crowd of people if that's running contrary to public health advice. I will trust the medical professionals to the letter every day that they release new decisions. There's been a loosening of restrictions today, and I don't feel that I, as an elected official, am in a better position than a chief medical officer whose background is in public health to determine what the public should be doing. We're relying on experts to keep our communities and our families safe, and I think any other approach would be foolhardy.
Sean Fraser in Nova Scotia, thanks so much for this, and thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
A pleasure as always. Thank you so much.